This is going to be a very out of character, serious video from me, but it's a point that I really think needs addressing. And the point is very simple. It's this, that the mere fact there has been an acquittal, a not guilty, in a rape case does not mean that it was a false accusation. Okay? So to explain why, I'll just give you a bit of a criminal law 101. Uh, Generally speaking, when we look at crimes, we look at the act itself, but also the state of mind of the person committing the act at the time. We use the terms actus reus for the act and mens rea for the state of mind. Now, some offences, you don't need the state of mind element. They're usually sort of like minor regulatory offences. So if you've got a bald tyre, all the prosecution need to show is you had a bald tyre. They don't have to show you knowingly had a bald tyre or you were reckless as to whether you had a bald tyre. Just having the bald tyre is enough. And that's what we call strict liability offences. But more serious offences require the element of mens rea. And to give you an example, okay, say for instance, I just bump into somebody. They fall over, crack the skull, never recover. Another occasion, I'm having a bit of a row with somebody and I push them. So it's an assault, but I don't really mean any harm, but I push them. They fall over, crack the skull, same result. And the third thing, I'm having a proper row with somebody and I take a big swing at them and I'm really trying to hurt them. I really want to cause them serious harm. And they fall over, crack skull, same result. Well, same consequences, but three very different outcomes. In the first situation, I just didn't even know you were there, perhaps. I just bump into you. So I have no mental element whatsoever. I didn't even know you existed. In that situation, no crime is committed. There might be civil liability, but there's no offence. The second element, I was either reckless as to what would happen or I was committing an offence. That's enough for manslaughter because manslaughter can be committed either where you are reckless as to what harm will occur or you commit another unlawful act. I mean, to say, for instance, I am speeding and I hit somebody and they don't recover. That would be manslaughter. However, we actually have an offence there. We have the offence of dangerous driving, causing death by dangerous driving, or causing death by careless driving. They were specifically introduced because juries would not convict of manslaughter in traffic cases because I think there's an element of, well, there but for the grace of God go I. People go, no, I'm not always a perfect driver. I wouldn't want to think that, that suddenly, if quotes, an accident happened, I would be a manslaughterer. So that's why those offences were brought in. But yeah, if you do any sort of unlawful act and it results in somebody's death, that can be enough for manslaughter. Also, if you are reckless as to what harm you're doing, you don't necessarily, you weren't trying to really hurt them, but you were just reckless as to the risk, then that's enough. But in the latter category, the mens rea for murder is at the time the fatal injury is inflicted, I either meant to cause serious harm or kill them. Okay, but just serious harm is enough. For murder, you don't have to show that somebody intended to kill somebody, only that they intended to commit really serious harm, and the person died as a result. So, in rape cases in the UK, the actus reus is just any penetrative act with somebody who is not consenting. That's the actus reus. So if the victim, if something happens and the victim wasn't consenting, that's the actus reus. But that's not enough for a conviction. You have to show the mens rea element. And the mens rea is that in England and Wales, that you knew or were reckless as to whether or not consent existed. And it is for the Crown to prove to the requisite standard, which is so you are sure, it's not beyond reasonable doubt, but it equates to beyond reasonable doubt, that you genuinely knew or didn't care about consent. So the old, I'm a bit of an idiot and I misread the signals, that can negate the mens rea element. Now, there are some situations in some other jurisdictions and in England and Wales where in certain circumstances the burden does shift when proving whether or not whether there was consent or whether you believe there was consent. But that's in situations, so to give an example, if you kidnap somebody, tie them up, point a gun to their head, and then do the deed, the burden is on you to show that you honestly didn't realise that there was no consent there. Okay, so you might think that's not particularly high hurdle, but even then, you only have to show it on the balance of probabilities. It is more likely, than not that I didn't realise in those circumstances. And you can imagine in those circumstances why they've shifted. But it used to be, before this amendment was brought in, even if somebody was like, you'd kidnapped somebody, tied them up and threatened them, you could still go, oh, well, I thought they were consenting and it's for you to prove otherwise. But that's the situation. So most of these cases, they fail on the mens rea element. It can be accepted. Quite often the defence will say, we accept that this happened and we accept there was no consent. She wasn't consenting and this is what happened. However, our defence is we didn't realise that. And like I say, you've got to prove that, so that the jury are sure or beyond reasonable doubt. So even if they go, oh, that seems very unlikely, oh, come on, we can't really believe that. Unless they can completely rule that out, there is an acquittal. Okay? So that is why, like I say, there could be, it can be that there's no dispute that actually, from the victim's point of view, or the complainant, to use the neutral language, that, basically this happened and they weren't consenting. So it's clearly not a false allegation, but that is why it's so hard to get a conviction, because you have to show that element. But I just wanted to clear that up, because we see this, it was a not guilty, why isn't she being prosecuted for perjury or perverting the course of justice? Because often it's accepted that the complainant was completely honest and that actually happened, and the mere fact that somebody gets acquitted because they can't prove the mens rea elements, that doesn't change that. So I hope that clears it up, because I think it is quite an important point.